You are not exhausted because life is impossible. You are exhausted because your energy is leaking in 10 directions at once. Your attention is fractured. Your intentions are sincere, but weak. You wake up with plans, but by midday, your mind has already been negotiated away to noise, impulse, delay, and things that were never worthy of your life in the first place. And what makes this more painful is that part of you knows it. Part of you knows you are capable of a more serious life than the one you have been tolerating. There is a private disappointment that comes from wasted time, not dramatic failure, not public collapse, just the slow recognition that you are watching your own strength go unused. Days pass, weeks pass. You were not destroyed by one catastrophe. You were simply distracted out of your own potential. Pause. And that is why this matters, because the real battle is rarely against one great enemy. More often, it is against the ordinary way you have been living, against the casual habits that quietly weaken the mind, against the comforts that make you softer, against the patterns that teach you to betray yourself a little more each day. Most people do not lose their lives all at once. They lose them in fragments. A little attention given away here, a little delay justified there, one more hour spent in distraction, one more promise made to themselves and not kept, one more emotional reaction obeyed too quickly, one more morning started in chaos, one more evening ended with a dull ache of knowing they had drifted again. This is how strength leaks out of a person, not only through suffering, but through looseness, not only through pain, but through permission. You can see it in modern life everywhere. A person reaches for their phone before they reach for their own mind. They say they are tired, but they are not only tired, they are overstimulated. They are mentally scattered. They have trained themselves to live in interruption. Their attention is so divided that even in silence they still feel crowded. And when attention becomes weak, character usually follows, because a weak mind cannot hold a standard for very long. It bends toward comfort. It delays what is clear. It confuses movement with progress, stimulation with meaning, and emotional intensity with truth. I've had to confront this in myself too. Recently, I've been thinking about how much of a person's weakness is hidden inside wasted time. I've seen that when distraction, avoidance, and delay become normal, the mind becomes easier to weaken. Not because the person is incapable, but because they are being rehearsed in the wrong direction. That is the part many people do not want to admit. Every wasted day is not neutral, it is training. If you keep rehearsing distraction, hesitation, and low standards, you should not be surprised when your mental strength stays weak. If you keep waiting to feel ready before you act, you are teaching yourself obedience to mood. If you keep letting comfort decide what gets done, you are being governed by something smaller than your own reason. The Stoics understood this with frightening clarity. Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Epictetus, none of them were offering decorative wisdom for calm afternoons. They were training the mind to stand upright in a world full of temptation, agitation, uncertainty, ego, loss, and inner disorder. They knew that a person becomes lost long before they realize it. Lost not only in place but in judgment. Lost in what they give importance to. Lost in what they allow to occupy their mind. Lost in what they no longer have the courage to refuse. Stoicism is not about becoming cold. It is about becoming governed. It is a discipline of orientation. It teaches you to separate what is yours from what is not. To separate comfort from peace. To separate stimulation from nourishment. To separate motion from progress. To separate impulse from principle. And once you see those distinctions clearly, you begin to feel something rare in this age: direction. That is where mental strength begins, not in intensity, in orientation, not in saying you want more, in learning what deserves your life and what does not. So in this video, I want to walk through 7 Stoic rules, not as lifeless commandments, but as rungs in an ascent, a way of moving from fragmentation to command, from wasted time to disciplined use of your days, from mental softness to inward steadiness. And the first rule begins at the gate. Rule 1. Guard what enters the mind. This is where many people lose the war before the day even begins. They think their problem is motivation, or discipline, or confidence. But beneath all of that, there is a simpler issue. They have made no serious effort to govern what they allow into consciousness. They let anything enter. Any headline, any comparison, any fear, any irritation, any fantasy, any piece of useless information strong enough to stimulate them for a moment. Then they wonder why their inner world feels crowded. The Stoics were relentless about perception because they understood that the first wound is often invisible. It happens in interpretation. It happens in the quick acceptance of a thought that should have been challenged. It happens when you entertain a degrading story about yourself for too long, when you revisit old anger as if it still deserves rent in your mind, when you rehearse future failure before reality has even arrived. A person can become loyal to thoughts that are making them weak, and because those thoughts are familiar, they begin to feel true. This is one of the great modern confusions. People mistake inward chaos for depth. They think that because a thought is intense, it must be meaningful. Because an emotion is loud, it must be obeyed. Because their mind is busy, it must be engaged in something important. No. Much of what fills the mind is not depth. It is debris. Seneca warned that people are frugal with money and reckless with time. Today we should add something else. They are reckless with attention. They hand it away as if it were endlessly renewable, then complain that they feel mentally tired, spiritually thin, and incapable of focus. But attention is not a small thing. Attention is life in usable form. Where your attention goes, your days go. And where your days go, your character follows. So the first rule is not merely to think positive thoughts. It is far more serious than that. It is to become a gatekeeper, to ask with increasing strictness what deserves access to my mind. Which thoughts sharpen me, and which thoughts drain me? Which inputs leave me more sober, more clear, more capable of duty, and which ones leave me restless, envious, agitated, or hollow? Marcus Aurelius did not tell himself to never have intrusive thoughts. He trained himself not to submit to them. That is the distinction. You do not control every mental arrival, but you do become responsible for what you keep feeding. Not every thought deserves a chair at your table. Not every fear deserves a hearing. Not every comparison deserves investigation. Not every emotion deserves a speech. And once you begin to live this way, you feel the first return of strength, because the mind is no longer an open city. It is defended ground. Then comes the second rule, and it enters through the first hours of the day. Rule 2. Win the morning before the world enters. Most mornings are not lost by catastrophe. They are lost by drift. A person wakes up and immediately enters reaction. They check messages. They search for stimulation. They let the outside world speak first. Before they have taken command of their own attention, they have already allowed themselves to be claimed by demand, novelty, and noise. The morning becomes a surrender ceremony, and they do not call it that because it looks harmless, but what begins the day often governs the day. If your first hour is fragmented, hurried, distracted, and externally directed, do not be surprised when the rest of your mind follows that same shape. Stoicism places moral weight on beginnings, not because mornings are magical, but because they are revealing. The way you begin says something about what you serve. If the beginning of the day is casual, the mind becomes casual. If it is serious, the mind remembers its rank. This does not mean you need a theatrical morning routine designed to impress strangers. It means your first hour must contain order, some proof that your life is not beginning in surrender, some evidence that your attention belongs to you before it belongs to the world. Stillness, reflection, a written intention, time without noise, movement that wakes the body and steadies the nerves. Work begun before appetite has time to argue. These are not optimization tricks. They are acts of self-respect. Too many people want a stronger life while protecting a weak beginning. It does not work that way. The day has to feel the presence of your standards early, or your impulses will take the room. This is also where I had to change something real in myself. I used to excuse delay as preparation and inconsistency as part of the process. It sounded reasonable. It sounded gentle. But much of it was self-betrayal dressed in softer language. The truth was simple. I was leaving too much room for mood to vote on what should have already been decided. That leads to the third rule. Rule 3. Act before your feelings agree. This may be the rule that changes the most. Because one of the most dangerous habits in modern life is the habit of waiting for emotional permission. Waiting to feel ready. Waiting to feel motivated. Waiting to feel motivated. Waiting to feel clear. Waiting to feel inspired. As if the work becomes real only after your emotions approve it. But if you live that way, your life will be governed by weather. And weather cannot lead a man. One of the most important shifts I ever made was learning to act before my feelings agreed. Doing what needed to be done before motivation appeared built more strength in me than waiting for inspiration ever did. Because every time you act from principle instead of preference, you strengthen the part of yourself that can be trusted under pressure. This is deeply Stoic. Epictetus taught that freedom comes when you stop being dragged around by what is outside your command. Mood is often one of those things. It rises, it falls, it changes with sleep, food, memory, stress, hormones, disappointment, anticipation. If you build your discipline on emotion, you build on moving sand. The person with mental strength is not emotionless. He is not dependent. He can feel resistance and still begin. He can feel doubt and still move. He can feel heaviness and still keep his word. That is dignity, and it saves enormous amounts of time, because so much wasted time is not really rest. It is hesitation. It is inner negotiation. It is the draining space between knowing and doing. Hours are burned there. Not in effort, but in avoidance. Not in necessary recovery, but in low-grade resistance. The disciplined life closes that gap, not perfectly, but deliberately. You stop asking, "Do I feel like it?" and start asking, "Is it mine to do?" That question hardens the mind in the right way. It returns you to duty. It rescues you from the tyranny of preference. Then the ascent gets more demanding. Because it is one thing to start well, it is another thing to hold command when emotion surges. Rule 4. Interrupt reaction before it becomes action. This is where many people reveal their true level of self-command. Not when life is easy, when they are irritated, rejected, delayed, embarrassed, anxious, provoked, afraid. That is where weakness usually appears first, not only in what they feel, but in how quickly they obey it. A message arrives and they react. A plan changes and they panic. Someone disrespects them and they rush to prove something. A wave of frustration rises and they let it choose their tone, their posture, their next decision. This is how time is lost through emotion. Not only in breakdown, but in leakage. An hour of anger after a 5-minute insult, a whole day ruined by one inconvenience. A week of avoidance triggered by one moment of self-doubt. The Stoic discipline here is not suppression, it is interruption. Between stimulus and conduct, there must be a pause, a space where reason can re-enter. A moment where you ask, what is actually happening and what am I adding to it? Is this event the problem? Or is my interpretation inflaming it? Must this feeling become behavior? Must this irritation become speech? Must this fear become retreat? Most people never learn to sit inside that pause. They treat every feeling like a command, but feelings are often signals, not instructions. They tell you something is present. They do not automatically tell you what is true or what is wise. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself that events are filtered through judgment. That is why composure is not passivity, it is disciplined interpretation. It is the refusal to let the first emotional story become the final one. And this is where mental strength becomes visible. Can you remain unhurried inside a surge? Can you delay expression long enough to recover perspective? Can you keep a sharp emotion from entering your mouth, your messaging, your schedule, your decisions? Because one uncontrolled reaction can waste more time than one difficult task ever would. It can fracture trust, disturb concentration, pollute a day, create a problem that did not need to exist. Strong people are not merely intense, they are governable from within. They can absorb a hit without instantly becoming it. Then comes the rule that builds identity through repetition. Rule 5. Repeat standards, not excuses. Character is not built by rare declarations, it is built by what you rehearse. This is one of the harshest truths a person can accept. You are becoming whatever you repeatedly permit, not what you admire, not what you intend, not what you say you value when you're in an inspired mood. You are becoming the pattern. If distraction is repeated, distraction becomes identity. If excuses are repeated, excuses become identity. If avoidance is repeated, avoidance becomes identity. And the reverse is also true. If order is repeated, order deepens. If restraint is repeated, restraint strengthens. If difficult action is repeated, the mind begins to trust itself. A life is structured by recurrence. That is why tolerated weakness is so dangerous. The problem is not only the individual act, it is the training effect. Every time you let yourself off with a lie you no longer believe, you make the next surrender easier. Every time you promise yourself seriousness and then choose indulgence, you thin out your own authority. Soon, your words stop carrying weight with your own mind. That is a devastating state to live in. Because once self-trust erodes, everything becomes harder. Focus becomes harder. Recovery becomes harder. Ambition becomes harder. Ambition becomes harder. You start needing more emotion to do what should have been simple. More motivation, more urgency, more guilt, more pressure, because plain discipline is no longer available to you. The Stoics treated the self like something to be trained, not endlessly negotiated with. Duty was not a dramatic event. It was the daily shaping of character through repetition. The ordinary act repeated under the right standard becomes moral architecture. So ask yourself a simple question. What am I rehearsing every day? Not what do I believe? Not what do I believe? Not what do I want? What am I rehearsing? Because repetition is always teaching the mind something, either that standards can be bent or that they can be upheld. Either that discomfort is a reason to stop or merely part of the path. Either that you are a person of mood or a person of principle. And this is how time stops being wasted. Not because your life becomes perfectly efficient, but because your days stop contradicting your values. The small actions begin to move in one direction. The mind no longer spends itself defending a life it knows is beneath its standard. Then comes pressure, the place where all training is tested. Rule 6, return to what is within your control. There are few things more exhausting than trying to command what was never yours. Other people's opinions, other people's pace, the timing of outcomes, the fairness of events, the certainty of the future, the behavior of those who disappoint you, the speed at which life rewards your effort, the fact that some days feel empty, some seasons feel lonely, and some roads feel slower than you wanted. Most people waste immense strength fighting reality at the wrong level. They resent what already is. They bargain with what has already happened. They spiral over possibilities they cannot currently resolve. And because their attention leaves the sphere of action, they become weak, where they actually do have power. Epictetus gave one of the clearest principles ever spoken. Some things are up to us, and some are not. Simple, uncomfortable, liberating, Mental strength begins to grow the moment you stop pouring emotional energy into what refuses your command and start returning it to what is actually yours: your posture, your effort, your interpretation, your speech, your standards, your next action. This matters under stress. It matters under rejection. It matters when boredom enters, when loneliness enters, when uncertainty enters. Because pressure makes people expansive in the wrong way. They start mentally chasing 10 outcomes at once. They catastrophize. They search for reassurance. They want the entire future settled before they can move one step. But the Stoic mind narrows on purpose. It asks, what is mine now? Not forever, now. What is the honorable response in this hour? What conduct is still available to me? What standard can still be kept even here? That is how steadiness is built. Not by controlling life, but by remaining internally positioned when life refuses to cooperate. And that leads to the seventh and final rule, which binds all the others together. Rule 7. Judge the day by obedience, not intention. This rule strips away illusion, because many people are emotionally attached to the person they meant to be. They take comfort in desire, in plans, in self-image, in what they almost started, what they nearly committed to, what they would have become if circumstances were better, if timing were cleaner, if energy were higher. But mental strength is not built on what you meant, it is built on what you obeyed. Did you obey clarity or appetite? Did you obey your standard or your excuse? Did you obey your first principle or your first mood? This is where time becomes morally visible. A wasted day is not only a day in which nothing happened, it is a day in which the higher part of you was seen clearly enough and ignored anyway. That is why regret is so heavy. It is not just lost time. It is witnessed self-betrayal. But this rule is also freeing because it makes evaluation honest. You no longer need elaborate stories. You no longer need to dramatize or protect yourself. At the end of the day, you can ask, what did I serve today? Disorder or discipline? Noise or substance? Delay or action? Vanity or duty? And if the answer is disappointing, good. Now the day has told the truth. Truth is not your enemy. It is the beginning of correction. A serious life is not built by constant self-condemnation, but by plain accounting, by refusing to flatter your own inconsistency, by seeing the day clearly and deciding that tomorrow will not be handed over so cheaply. This is what wasted time has been teaching you all along, if you are willing to hear it. That life is not usually ruined by one dramatic downfall. It is weakened by tolerated drift. And the man who learns to stop that drift becomes dangerous in the right way, because now his attention is not easily bought, his mood is not easily obeyed, his standards are not constantly renegotiated, his mind is no longer available to every passing thing. He has climbed out of the scattered life, and what emerges from that ascent is not a perfect person. It is a gathered one, a person who no longer needs chaos to feel alive, who no longer confuses busyness with meaning, who no longer wastes hours rehearsing resentment, fantasy, comparison, or delay, who can sit in silence without panic, who can work without needing constant stimulation, who can face stress without immediately becoming disordered by it. This is the mind that no longer scatters. Look closely at what changes in such a person. Not everything outside them. Inside them, certain things no longer gain entry. Petty comparison begins to feel beneath them. Constant outrage begins to feel cheap. Impulsive speech begins to feel undisciplined. Endless consumption begins to feel like theft. Not theft from society. Theft from the self. Theft from clarity. Theft from purpose. Theft from the man they are trying to become. Their peace is different now. Not soft peace. Earned peace. The peace of someone who has trained attention instead of surrendering it. The peace of someone who knows that the morning can be held, the reaction can be interrupted, the habit can be corrected, the standard can be repeated, the pressure can be met without collapse. the peace of someone who does not need the world to become simpler before becoming stronger. And there is something quietly powerful about that kind of person. At work, they are less theatrical and more effective. In silence, they do not unravel. In conflict, they are slower to waste themselves. Under temptation, they remember the cost. Under disappointment, they return to duty faster. Under uncertainty, they narrow to what is theirs. They have become difficult to manipulate because they are no longer desperate for mood, praise, novelty, or immediate relief. That is mental strength, not aggression, not performance, not image. Inner command, the kind that cannot be faked for long because it is built in ordinary hours, in what you open your mind to, in how you begin a day, in whether you act before mood agrees, in whether you interrupt reaction, in what you repeat, in where you place your energy under pressure, in whether you judge yourself by conduct instead of fantasy. This is why I believe every wasted day trains the mind in the wrong direction, because if you keep rehearsing distraction, hesitation, and low standards, weakness stops feeling accidental. It starts feeling familiar. And once weakness becomes familiar, people begin decorating it with language instead of correcting it. They call it being in a weird season. They call it not being ready. They call it needing the right feeling. They call it part of the process. Sometimes it is. Often it is surrender with a better vocabulary. And if that line stings, let it sting cleanly. Because this video is for the person who is tired of wasting days, tired of weak discipline, and tired of feeling mentally softer than they know they should be. The person who is restless, dissatisfied, and inwardly aware that too much of life is being lost through drift. If that is you, then do not leave this as another moment of recognition with no structural response. Take the rules seriously. Guard what enters the mind. Win the morning before the world enters. Act before your feelings agree. Interrupt reaction before it becomes action. Repeat standards, not excuses. Return to what is within your control. Judge the day by obedience, not intention. This is the ascent, not glamorous, not easy, but real. And now it becomes a vow. From this day forward, do not ask for a stronger mind while protecting the habits that keep you weak. Do not complain about wasted time while continuing to spend it without reverence. Do not say you want peace if you keep feeding disorder. Do not say you want discipline if you still kneel to mood. Stop leaking life. Stop softening your standards. Stop betraying what is already clear. Build the kind of mind that your future cannot be ashamed of. If this resonated, like the video, and in the comments, write the line or insight that hit you hardest. Subscribe if you want more grounded Stoic philosophy and self-mastery content like this. But above all, leave here with something firmer than inspiration. Leave with a standard, a quiet law, a daily vow that your life will no longer be governed by distraction, weakened by hesitation, or scattered by every passing impulse. That your time will be treated as sacred. That your mind will be trained to obey what is highest in you, and that from this day on, you will not merely hope to become stronger, you will live in a way that makes weakness harder to return to. Become the master of your mind. Rebuild, refocus, rise,